Welcome to our adult education today. This program will be recorded. We have some online folks with us who were online for worship and are staying on with us. And what an amazing congregation too, because I'm newer to the congregation, but as I look to, and also newer to be on session with an adult education hat on, that's why some of these things are percolating away. But to see, even on our homepage, the idea that we are an Earth Care congregation, what does that mean? We've been doing that for some years. That the presbytery has a place for us to go for additional things that we might be able to do. That each of our panelists has some ideas and suggestions, that you too have other ideas and suggestions. And this is all in the context of climate change, all in the context of us acknowledging that that's real and that climate unraveling is happening. And even the inroads that we're taking, or the things that we might leave with today or be inspired around, are we just prolonging a situation that's an inevitable? Let's see what we can do from a place of love, individually, as a group, and let's see where this conversation takes us. Any questions? I'll also be sharing a few slides, so we'll begin with that. Bear with me, please. So here's just an excerpt of what the Earth Care Pledge shows. You're able to see the full pledge that we as a congregation have taken as you click through some of the links on our homepage. What do you see that pops out? Of course, I made some of the words a little bit larger, and this is just a fraction. But humble stewards. Careful, humble stewards, says Sue. Panelists, anything else you would want to add that speaks to you? Cherish. Okay. So we have an opportunity here to think, here Earth Day is going to be April 22nd. Yet some of the things that we're going to be seeing in the media aren't always going to be coming from a spiritual context. So we get to add that today. So with the knowledge of climate unraveling, how do we approach the care of our Earth today and now? We thank each of our panelists who are up here. Dave's going to speak to church facilities. Barbara R. is speaking to the adoption of renewables. Cheryl P. is speaking to both political stewardship and personal stewardship, and we actually have some slide support and links for that. And Lindsay will be speaking to the Environmental Voter Project, but each of you might also have some additional comments on this and other things that are on your mind that you'd like to be able to bring up today. Well, Dave, why don't you get us started?
Well, I don't know whether we're really humble stewards, because I'm going to be a sort of bragging steward in terms of our buildings and grounds. We have 18,000 square feet of a footprint, and we have 30,000 square feet in our facilities. So it's a big campus. And I'm going to talk about electricity, water, natural gas, and waste. Over the last 15 years, everywhere on this campus, we've gone from incandescent lights and the old fluorescent tubes to then the first generation of fluorescent tubes that were better, to now all LED everywhere, including these, which were custom made by Martin and I because we couldn't find something that was work in that kind of thing. And that saves about 80% of your electricity from lighting, just switching everything to LEDs. We installed solar panels in 2004 for Duncan Hall, so we were really early adapters there. In 2018, there was a recall of those solar panels, which was very lucky because we got rid of all the BP solar panels, and by that time the new ones had twice as much energy per square foot than the old ones. And the Resources and Finance Committee decided we would spend the extra money, because it did cost a little bit more, and put solar panels on the preschool facing east. You can't see them from here. And we're now in the situation we generate 44,000 kilowatt hours of electricity a year, which is equivalent of enough for 4 homes. And in 2025, the church used 27,000 kilowatt hours, which means we generated a net surplus of 17,000 kilowatt hours. Now, a summary of our church's footprint in 2019, done by Doug Oles, shows that our use of natural gas had the biggest climate impact because of the CO2. And in the last 3 years, we have gotten rid of the radiant heating natural gas powered system for the preschool, the office, and the back of the sanctuary. And from doing that, our use of energy has gone from 7,600 therms to 4,900 therms, which is about a 40% reduction. So we've reduced the biggest source. Actually, the year he did it was interesting because the actual biggest source that year was a mission trip we took to Puerto Rico, and the jet emissions for the 12 people that went there and back. But in terms of things we can control, we've done a really good job on our furnaces. Now, on the water, 20 years ago, there were lawns down both sides, between the sidewalk and the curb, out front, and down the side of Ross Avenue. And in 2020, we eliminated the lawn there as part of the capital campaign then, and we have taken out all the lawns over there. We stopped anything in the greenway, and therefore our water consumption is way down in terms of irrigation. And in the last 20 years, every toilet has become a low-flow toilet. So we've done about as much as you can do. And waste. We did an audit of the dumpster about 15 years ago, found the preschool was the biggest user, worked with them, reduced our waste by half because they're composting and recycling. And the dumpster used to be emptied twice a week, and now it's once a week. So we have done a lot of stuff to walk the walk in this church.
Any questions or comments from the audience around our participants on this? We're hearing a thank you, but we'll bring the microphone to you if you have any other comments. We can come back to that later then. Let's hear from Barbara R.
The world transition to renewables is happening rapidly. Costs have plummeted, particularly for solar and stationary battery storage. The annual rate of increase of renewables electricity is 35%. Renewables now account for 15% of the world economy. With political and international cooperation, the switch to renewables would be technically possible. The lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper, and other necessary ingredients for transition are unevenly distributed across the world. There is a race for control of these resources. Think the US versus China. China has been the main supplier of these metals and controls all processing. China is selling its technology widely abroad. According to Vince Baser in his book, Power Metal, human exploitation and environmental degradation are rampant in the new industries. Rainforests are being cut to the ground, rivers are being poisoned, Children are working in mines and workers are being killed. Mining also requires lots of scarce water. As examples, the Mountain Pass rare earth mine in California was found to be spewing radioactive toxins. It was closed. Myanmar controls the extraction of rare earths using armed militias. Other cases abound: extraction plans from the bottom of the sea, the Congo, the Andean deserts, and the proposed extraction of lithium from the Salton Sea. Nonetheless, transition is happening even here in the US. Our enormous generation of fossil fuels is still only 1% of our economy. In Texas, fossil fuel production has remained more or less static, while the rate of production of renewables, particularly wind, has doubled. Utah is allowing cheap balcony solar panels, and those are examples from red states. Recycling of materials, repairing of equipment, and repurposing occur, although not as widely here as in poorer nations. A recent study argues that meeting climate targets will require us to reorient our relationship to nature. It is necessary to increase biodiversity, protect intact ecosystems, and reverse ecological damage. Our society has placed the growth economy first. The hierarchy must be nature first, then caring for people. The Yellowstone Yukon area has actually increased biodiversity in the last 30 years. I just have one more sentence or two. In Montana, indigenous tribes consider the natural world a living relative. They use traditional ecological knowledge of reciprocity. This requires making sure ecological systems are not depleted beyond their ability to regenerate.
Thank you for sharing just certain approaches here that have some hope. Any other questions or comments from our in-person participants?
I have a comment.
Please, Dave.
So one comment to the countries that are planning wars to get lithium. There is now in production, it's not a theory, iron batteries. It uses iron rather than lithium. It is good, it's heavier, so it's not as good for cars, but for stationary backup batteries, it's starting to go into mass production. So I think the rarity of lithium has inspired people to really investigate more numerous sources, because there's a lot more iron available than there is lithium.
Yeah, all of that is true, but in 4 minutes, I really didn't have a chance to explore this topic in detail. There's also salt batteries that they're thinking about with just sodium.
Well, and I'm excited that I get to go after Barbara, because so many of the things that Barbara was talking about the different types of energy, renewables, the way we create change is through policy. And I don't even want to touch on federal politics, that's too big of a topic. But California has been a climate leader for years. We have had aggressive climate policies and regulation in the state of California. And a lot of what drives California's desire to have aggressive climate policies is that people in California care and they're activists. And this congregation has been very good at being active politically on the local level. And so I want to challenge this group to be active on the state level as well. And let your legislators know how important these issues are, and not to let the headwinds coming from the federal government change California's focus on trying to fight for being energy neutral, having clean water, clean air, strong environmental protections. And so the points on the slide, I wanted to point out community participation really does matter. As bills work their way through the legislature, letting your legislators know that you care is very important. Community support balances the lobbyists. Big businesses, they have lobbyists. They're very active. They have a political machine. But working through nonprofits and making your voice known for the issues that you care about is so important, and it really does influence the legislature. It really does matter. And so how to get involved, I put a few links on the slide of a few nonprofits that have really good action alert pages. You can go to either Sierra Club or NRDC, and I'm sure there are others out there, but these are two that I'm aware of, that they have legislative teams that track the bills working through legislature, they track policies being developed by individual agencies, and they let you know how you can engage. When can you write a letter to your legislators or make a phone call? When can you show up at a public meeting? So many of the agencies now have gone to hybrid setups for their public meetings that you don't have to go to Sacramento, you can just join a Zoom call from your house. And so it's easier than ever to participate and make your voice heard.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thoughts? Additions? Good. We can count on
Sorry
Dave.
to hog, but by doing this presentation, I looked at our history of our solar panels and things, and I called up the PG&E because they were put on a long time ago. And it turns out our rate plan is only grandfathered for 20 years. And this January, we went to a new rate plan. The old rate plan, because they were trying to encourage solar, gave us 34 cents a kilowatt hour on the average for that 17,000 kilowatt hours excess that we have. The new rate plan, the rate is zero. We will be paid zero for the energy we generate, and PG&E will charge 34 cents to someone else for that energy. And I've talked to Lisa about it, and there's a reason. So many people build solar that they don't need to encourage solar. They want solar with a battery. So this happened to my residence last year. We got battery backup to take advantage of that excess. So we're going to have to explore at a church, what to do about the new rate plan. But the reason I brought it up, well, first, I only learned it this week when I did some research, but also Cheryl talked about lobbying the state, lobbying the PUC, trying to make your voice heard.
Mm-hmm. Lisa?
Is it on? Okay, so can you hear me? Okay, so I just want to mention, since I work for the CPUC and I hear a lot about this, I don't work on this issue directly, but one reason why the rates were changed for what solar customers are paid is that a whole big detailed 4-year cost study showed that non-solar customers were subsidizing the solar. And it's been very contentious. A lot of people argued against the change because we still want solar. But we couldn't have the non-solar customers subsidizing the solar. And I understand the frustration, but there's a whole bunch of information on the CPUC website if you ever want to look into it more. But I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, I have another comment about that. I work pretty closely with 350 Bay Area Action, and their argument about PG&E is that PG&E likes to spend money on things that make them profitable, and one of that is building out a lot of transmission lines. And other things that are profitable for them, and they don't profit from rooftop solar. And what the environmental community calls distributed solar, which means rooftops and battery storage and electric vehicles and all of that. So they really don't feel that that argument that PG&E is making is actually an honest argument.
Thank you, friends, for this conversation. Lindsay, why don't you fill us in on the Environmental Voter Project and how our congregation's been involved with that? Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. I can see in our gathering here that most of you have been actively writing postcards, for which we thank you. And I thought, even though you may have some awareness of what the Environmental Voter Project as an organization is, that I would highlight some things I lifted straight off their website and present that to you. Their mission statement: we identify inactive environmentalists and transform them into consistent voters to build the power of the environmental movement. A key driving principle is when environmentalists don't vote, politicians don't listen. So a lot of the theory behind what their work is to have a contingent within the voting population that will be identified as an interest group that politicians should not be ignoring. They are very data-driven. They have lots of information on their website as to the results they've achieved, which are quite remarkable. They got started back in 2015, and since then have contacted 12.8 million low-propensity voters and helped convert 2.2 million of those people into super voters who now consistently vote in every state, local, federal election. So they have proven results. They do controlled trials to take a look back on designated elections, 289 highly controlled randomized trials that present the measure their impact on specific elections. They've participated in 2,700 elections to date. Let's see, they target the states where they feel they can have the biggest impact and talk to voters year-round, which is key. That's why we are writing postcards, or just have completed writing postcards right now to Pennsylvania. Barbara has led the charge in doing phone banking, which is run any year-round. I mean, you can participate in phone banking any day, all year round. And in terms of the statistics of our own congregation and our contribution to the environmental voter postcarding campaigns, we started back in 2023, 300 postcards. We just started in the fall. In 2024, these numbers are approximate. We haven't kept super records, but Barbara's memory is usually reliable. So 2024, 1,500 postcards. Last year, 2,800. And already this year, 1,000 postcards are going in the mail on Wednesday. So, as I said, Barbara's always looking for recruits to do phone banking if you're interested. That's available. And also through the Church and Society Committee, the congregation has been supporting EVP with donations since 2024. So, and you know, I think I look around at you, you've all spent hours writing postcards, and I hope this has given you a little bit of a more complete picture of how those 25 cards at a time translate into positive results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thoughts on connecting with others, influencing others from your perspectives through these vehicles? Sue would like a microphone. Anyone up? Thank you, Cheryl.
I just wanted to mention something that I use, and I've talked a lot of other people into using, is an organization called RIDWell, R-I-D well. And they have a little box that they give you, and you put it on your front porch, and they come pick up the contents every 2 weeks. And in that box, you have a place to put plastics, plastic film, bottle caps, and now I believe they're going to be taking some cans. There's a lot of pieces that they do, and I have used them for a couple years now. If you ask me, I can probably get you a free month, and you can give it a try and see if you like the idea of having somebody come pick up your plastics. What you won't believe is how many plastics that you go through. I thought I had some plastics, but everything I go through is like, oh, that's wrapped in plastic. Oh no, this is plastic. So it's made me a lot more conscientious.
Is that all forms of plastic?
It's they kind of tell you what to do. Plastic film, which is thinner than plastic. I forgot what's the other word. Multi-layer plastics, like that are on the outside of potato chips and that kind of stuff. Those are in a separate bag.
Yeah.
But I fill those bags up, and I take them from the kitchen here on Sundays. I'm not taking it today, but I will be taking it in the future. So let me know if you're interested in RIDWell.
We do have a little shelf in the pantry part of our Duncan Hall that has a little poster sign, and we are trying to do our best to put some of the overwraps from our community fridge project there, and Sue will scoop them up. Yeah, awesome. I went ahead and put up the next slide here, and that's Cheryl is going to help us with personal stewardship. And boy, are there so many things even that you may want to add on to this when it comes to what you're doing for transportation, what you're doing for energy, what you're doing for food consumption. But Cheryl's going to lead us a little bit in this discussion.
So, Sue, thank you for talking about RIDWell. When we found out that you'd fallen and couldn't be on the panel, Cheryl Egan asked if I could talk about it, because I also use RIDWell. It's great. And yeah, I'm also surprised how many plastics that were just going in the trash that now I can recycle. And I've been trying to save my plastic bags and take them to grocery stores where they recycle it. And too many times I couldn't find the place, or they weren't actually taking it. RIDWell takes it, and they have accountability on their webpage. You can see what percent is actually recycled and what organizations use it and what products they make from it. So you know it's really being used. I also wanted to talk about, Royce turned me onto this program several years ago. He had a cohort from the church that went through it, a program called Resilient Neighborhoods. And it's a program that's still going on. Before COVID, it was in-person cohorts. They've now turned it into an online program. So if you haven't participated and gone through this program, I highly recommend it. It's a series of five sessions, and they talk about how to understand what is your footprint. What is your carbon footprint? Where can you make changes to your lifestyle to really make a difference? Because sometimes it's so hard to know what you do in your daily life, what really matters, what makes a difference. And this is a great program to help you understand that and make the choices that will make a difference in your own life. It also talks about adaptation, that as we have climate unraveling, as there are disasters, how do we build a resilient community that we can rely on each other and support each other when things don't necessarily go the way we hope? And so, like, one of the small examples of how I've taken that into my life is exchange keys with a trusted neighbor, so that if there's an emergency, I have someone that I can call on if I'm not home to check on something. And so I highly recommend the Resilient Neighborhood Program. It will give you lots of ideas, and Sue already talked about RIDWell.
The other thing that's coming up is May Day, and climate organizations are deciding to get involved in the fight for democratic politics, because most of them have been in their own lane just talking about climate for many years. And for example, 350 Bay Area and 350.org, like we're the only group that's only talks about climate and nothing else. But now they have decided that they have to fight fascism and join in what people are calling not integrated. There's another word that I can't come up with, but that looks at all of the inequalities that happen with workers and racism and so on. And so there is this large coalition which is going to be putting on a May Day project. Part of it is no shopping, no work, and no school for those people who can do that. Obviously, not everyone can do that. And also, there will be big demonstrations, at least San Francisco, Berkeley, and Oakland. And very likely there's going to be something in Marin. There is a plan to discuss it Thursday.
There's so many ways to feel empowered, and raise your hand if you feel like there's something that hasn't been brought up yet today, that you think, well, what about transportation? What about energy? What about food consumption? What about fill in the blank? Is there something else that you'd like us to explore, talk about today? Erica would love a microphone. Thank you, Cheryl, for being the runner.
It's just a thought, but the Resource Recovery Center we're in has a lot of programs that I am not finding anywhere else for recycling paper, for recycling various metals. In our move to Seattle, we were looking, and everything just goes into one big garbage can. And so I want to have a shout out to Marin Resource Recovery.
Our conversations are just, again, beginning, and we'll continue to be here to support each other. Just tossing that up here that our Presbyterian Church USA website has specific sections devoted to sustainable living and earth care concerns, as well as climate change. So if you want to use those search words on the site, or later work with a recording on YouTube and click the link, perhaps that'll give you some more thoughts or things that you feel that we might be able to do as a group. Jim has a comment.
Ultimately, it seems to me that what needs to happen is a change in the way we approach growth and consumption. Because even with changes, environmental or more sustainable moving forwards, if we continue this idea of constant growth, that's the serious problem. Mm-hmm. Because if we're interested in trying to duplicate what happens in nature, things don't continuously grow.
Right. I'm looking at Royce right now.
I'm sorry for kind of a downer.
No,
but ultimately, that is what needs to happen.
Right. There's some big...
Is our economic system screws us up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there is a movement of people studying indigenous ways of life. And I got this article from the Sierra Club, and it talks about a group of Native Americans in the the Salish and Kootenai tribes, and they are on the Flathead Reservation in Montana. And they are studying pretty carefully how to create a sustainable, non-growth oriented way of looking at things.
All right. Anyone want to speak?
Anyone who wants this is welcome to read it.
I think of the reciprocity economy that's been in some of the recent books and so on. Erica, did you want to speak to that, or anyone else who's been part of the Braiding Sweetgrass or other books that bring that up?
Thanks for mentioning reciprocity. The TSG read 2 books by Kimmerer, Braiding Sweetgrass and Barbara, I forgot.
Serviceberry.
Serviceberry. And they both talk about reciprocity, that what you do in one area affects all of the other areas. They're short chapters, they're nice meditations, and I really recommend both books of hers.
As we begin to wrap up, watching the clock, Lisa's going to make a comment, but here's the final slide for today, and that's, Lisa will make her comments now. Thanks.
Okay, one more comment about this whole thing. I think it would help to have more of the mainstream caring about this, and like everybody in the country could care if we just had more awareness of things like the penguins are struggling now because of the glacier melts, and the polar bears, and a lot of us know about that, but I think a lot of people don't. And if it could just become more in the mainstream, if we had the whole country caring about things like that, I think that would help a lot.
Mm-hmm. Dave?
Well, I thank you, Lisa, because Silent Spring is the book that really had the big foundational grassroots type of buildup that ended up with the Environmental Protection Agency and all our environmental laws. And it was about DDT mostly. But the species, and if it had been a little slug that you were worried about, or some bird you had never heard of, but it was the bald eagle. And that is what got people's attention. And so think of any creature at a zoo the kids like. That is the one, your polar bear thing reminded me. Tell people about things they care about. Every children's book has a polar bear in it. If you have enough children's books, it has to be P for polar bear or P for penguin or whatever. Yeah, that's a good idea. Just pick really symbolic things like the bald eagle.
I have to say, it's not just animals struggling. There are already people that are struggling. Friday at work, I facilitated a public comment period about agriculture and how to thread the needle between allowing agriculture in California, which is a huge part of California's economy. They need nitrogen as fertilizer, but nitrogen is impacting people's drinking water supply wells. And we heard from people who have been on bottled water for 15 years because of the fertilizers applied in the communities where they live. And these are people in California that don't have safe water. And that's not directly climate change, but it's all connected. And to Jim's comment about growth, we have this exponential trajectory trying to produce ever more agriculture, ever more products, ever more income. And it's so intertwined that it's not just agriculture, it's not just energy, it's not just one sector. It's really whole systems that we need to rethink. And people are being impacted already. And so anything we can do, everything we can do to start Unravel, any part of it, it helps.
Take note on this final slide that we do have some upcoming adult education, and Royce will lead us in a seminar on Sunday, May 17th, and the topic is human supremacy. There may...
It's true that on the 17th, I'm going to give a talk, make a presentation that relates to the big problems, the big part of what we've talked about here this morning. You know, that there's more to this than individual sectors and so forth. And I can't really, the topic is human supremacy, and I can't give any more details now without, I can't. But I hope that you all come, because I think there are resulting conversations that will be worthwhile.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Royce.
Well, there's the book, The Myth of Human Supremacy. There's a book that I've read that's great. It's called The Myth of Human Supremacy.
That's one of my reference books, is that book.
Isn't it wonderful to be among people who think big and can inspire us and give us some ideas and thoughts? And are you leaving here today with a sense of maybe a little more mission and purpose around something? Maybe more of a connection to this earth and to each other? And we do want, each of us wants to feel that we can have some form of an impact through our choices, even if it's for future generations or to lengthen things. So look at that call to action. Is there a doable step? Something that you want to research, something that you'd like to do individually, want to be part of a team. Some of your teammates are right here. So speak up if there's something you would like to make a dedication to. We'd like to be able to hear that, and we'd like to be able to help you, or just know that you've got, you are seen, heard, and cared for when you talk to any one of us in this room and in this congregation. Any more thoughts, friends, as we begin to wrap up for today? Chris has something to say, and there's probably a microphone near you.
Oh, I hope this is going to open a whole can of worms, but you know, I can't afford to live here in Marin County unless I share the place that I live with other people, to share the expense. Housing, not enough housing, and especially housing for people like me who are on a fixed income, retired, not able to, you know, make a ton of money and live decently like I like living here in Marin. So I'm trying to share the place that I live in with other people. And one of them, of course, is my son, and currently I'm looking for a housemate to live in a part of the home that I occupy so that I can afford to stay there and pay the rent. So that's another place that I think, of course, we're trying to do that here by providing a place for people to live. But there's a lot of property all over the place, especially property that was built for businesses that's just sitting there. Meanwhile, down in Anderson, they're living in piles of garbage and tents. So I think that trying to find ways to share housing or create housing that's, you know, going to be doable for more people. Because I really don't want to live in the kind of neighborhood I can afford to live in.
Let's wrap it up with a round of applause and great thanks for each of you who is participating and all that you'll be doing ahead. Thanks for your support. Thanks, and please continue to give us thoughts on interesting topics, whether it's speaker presentations, panels such as this. This is a great venue with a great audience. Thank you all. Thank you.